Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Fargo Season 4, Episode 3. It's called, I was thinking about the title of the episode, and it's thrown me off, because I have no idea how to say this. It's very Italian, I assume. Raddoppiarlo. That's my best guess, right? That's how you get it from me.
I feel like we probably should have Googled what it meant and just said that, but too late now.
That's not the title. This is the title. Well, as best as I could recreate it anyway.
I mean, you'd have butchered it either way, so.
Yeah. So, yes, episode 3. Which I actually think I enjoyed this one more than 2 for sure. I think.
Oh, definitely.
I think this
barring one specific moment.
That's fair. I think I know what it probably is, but this has a lot of set piece moments, and not set piece moments in that they're all big actiony moments. There's one particularly really tense section, right, which is I'd say is a set piece, but there's also set pieces in other ways. There's set pieces in kind of character quirk ways. There's a set piece in terms of how it films a certain scene. There's a lot of scenes that stood out to me and how they're handled on their own. It felt like they all kind of functioned almost on their own to create really good sequences. Whether it was because there was a visual sequence of action or because a character was given a monologue that was very good. Most of this episode, I think, falls into very creatively skilled material, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, and I think but you kind of hit on one of my biggest problems with the episode is all the individual things are pretty good. I don't think it gels together that well as like a one episode. Feels a bit disjointed.
Yeah, but I can see that complaint. I think I was just happy because I was more into most of the scenes this week than I was with episode 2.
That tends to help. Yeah.
I guess I was just feeling quite positive about it. But I mean, honestly, yeah, I can see what you mean. But the although a lot of the things do factor into the final scene and how Karen has to make a decision at the end. But yeah, so. The obvious place to start is the cliffhanger from last week was the policeman coming up to the door and kicking it in, and there was all sorts of theories about the pie being a signal for me. Obviously that was incorrect. That was one possibility I proposed. We do actually sort of jump back further to sort of the start of the chase, the investigation of the prison escape, and Timothy Olyphant, who I did not recognize last week, because we only just see him briefly at the end. Here we actually get to see him talk, and we see him talking to people. And there was this weird moment where, like, for a split second, I was like, I thought Billy Zane had put on more weight than this, and I was like, oh no, it's Timmy Olyphant, not Billy Zane. For some reason, I mixed the two up, and I don't know why. But
it's a strange mix-up.
But I don't know.
They don't look that alike.
No, they don't look that alike. But I don't know, something like I was like, oh, he's gotten older. That's why it looks different. And I was like, no, that's because it's not him. It's Timmy Olyphant.
It's a different person entirely.
Yeah, it's Timothy Olyphant. But yeah, I knew it was. And we see him. He's paired up with the crooked cop, and they go and they search the house while they're there. The characters are hiding in one of the drawers in the mortuary down below.
Yeah, I liked the bit in the police station where the chief knows exactly that the other cop's crooked, and he's like, I'm not having you dealing with that shit. Come over here where I can keep an eye on you, basically.
Yeah, because he brings up, oh, you went and visited the Fadas yesterday, and you're involved in this. How about you do this where there's someone looking over you the whole time, and it's not even like it's someone he knows looking over him. This is like some out of town U.S. Marshal who's hunting down some prisoners,
who's giving him shit for being a blasphemer.
Yes, so all that stuff's up. And again, it's this weird thing actually, and I guess we're just gonna have to get used to this in the way these episodes are structured. But once again, the first 15-20 minutes are spent on this introduction to this character and him chasing the prisoners, and then the rest of the episode he's not really there at all.
I think that might be leading to what gives me the disjointed feeling,
yeah,
because it sets me up for focus and it establishes that it goes just long enough where my mind goes, okay, this is the pacing, this is the format, and then it jumps around so much. And it's maybe not quite as bad as in the first one where it was half an hour, I think it was in that one, a bit like 25 minutes, I think, but it's close.
Yeah, and maybe this is something from previous seasons that we've just forgotten about, but it is really feeling like the opening 10-15 minutes of these episodes are almost like short films on their own, and then the episode starts and we get what the episode is from that point on. Because I'd say most of it is relevant after that, or at the very least, everything that's happening is a continuation of threads that we have from the previous episode. So none of it feels
definitely, yeah.
None of it feels kind of weird and out of place. So I mean, all of it was entertaining and well shot. I kind of laughed a little bit though, because basically when they don't find anything, he apologizes for disturbing them, and I'm like, you literally kicked in the door. You kicked in, like, the door's ruined. They have to replace their door. You don't just get to apologize and walk out, you prick.
You do if you're the police, apparently.
But no, so there's some standout scenes in this. The first scene that comes after this is Dr. Senator meets one of...
You've missed off possibly my favourite moment of this whole house scene is
Sure.
at the end, as he's in the kitchen apologising to them. They're at the table, and the two of them creep back up from downstairs. They got out of the drawer they were in, and they come back up, and they're lining up with the shot, with the gun, and it's the daughter just be there like, no, go back, stop it, he's going. I thought that was a good mixture of funny and tense.
Yeah, I mean, I think this pair of characters, Swanee and Zelmir, they're very cartoony in a lot of ways because they're so hijinksy.
Hijinksy is the word I was going to use. They're very Fargo, aren't they?
Yeah, maybe to a fault later on, which we'll get to. But yeah, so that's just that. We have Dr. Senator meets one of the Italians, one of the higher up Italian guys, and basically to sort of talk about the slaughterhouses and what happened last episode, and it basically results in him giving this great speech about how the word of others is questionable and how his word should not be questioned by them, and tells a story of when he was in the army, when he was in World War II, and he was asked to question, after the ceasefire, he was asked to question this Nazi for an extended amount of time, and he spent weeks interrogating him. He wrote this big giant report, as he points out, with footnotes and everything, and
it's like 400 pages, like you said it was.
And the guy, he trapped in the door, he gave him this report, all proud, and the guy just threw it in the trash. And basically, he just wanted this Nazi to feel the humiliation of having to answer to a black man. That was his whole thing. So, and because that was actually one of the interesting historical parts they brought in here. And it's funny because we're watching this in Lovecraft Country at the same time, and we're seeing how both are kind of bringing in different parts of history. And while obviously this is a lot more fantastical in a lot of ways, which is funny to say that because Lovecraft Country has monsters and shit, but and
it gets pretty out there.
But the history parts of it aren't that fantastical, whereas here things are played a lot more quirky. But I did appreciate them bringing in this detail here that was quite interesting that I'd never really considered, is this idea that he talks about the two victories. Okay, you have the victory of helping win the war, but this other victory of you'll have more respect back in the home country. You'll be treated differently. There'll be no more lynchings. There'll be no more of this. There'll be no more of that. And everything we see about the experience of Black America in the 50s, which is right after World War II, basically shows that as a complete crock of shit.
It was all bullshit. Yeah,
a complete crock of shit from start to finish. And I thought that speech was great. This is one of these things where Dr. Senator's been a fine character. He's a likable actor. I've seen him in other things, but this scene just gave him this great monologue. Just said, "Hey, go, just give this monologue," and it was great.
He still feels like a bit of a thin character, despite this fantastic moment. But I think that is, again, maybe this is something that there's always kind of been the case in Fargo, where it's a lot of quirk and a lot of surface level and not a lot of depth to a lot of the side characters. And I feel like he probably falls into that.
And this leads back to the Italians, who, when this guy goes back and tells, what he said, that this deal was there and that it belongs to them. And this is one of the, because this speech is a set piece moment. The other set piece moment, one of them I was talking about, is we've already a scene where Josto comes in and his brother's sitting in the chair, Gaetano, sorry. But he sort of, there's this implication that he's going for the chair, and Josto's like, hey, go back home if you're going to play by the rules and take orders. And he takes this old photo of the home that he grew up in, which he's not been in since he was a young child because it was destroyed. I can't even remember what he said it was destroyed in, but it was destroyed. And he's sitting with that photo in the bar. And I love this scene where the Italian comes in and he's like, hey, they said this. And he's like, well, we're going to, he sort of does the slash across the neck kind of, signal. And this is probably the most I've liked this character, because his performance in this scene just felt so, the way he keeps smiling at people. But there's a great moment where the camera's on a track just going left to right behind the bar, looking at the people sitting at the bar, And it mainly focuses on him, on Gaetano, but when he says he wants to kill because they're trying to take the slaughterhouse, he's like, oh, we'll kill some of them then, right? Essentially. The guy to our left, to his right, but to our left, off camera says, oh, the boss said no killing. And Gaetano sort of turns, and as he turns, the camera just tracks with him to show what's on the other side of him. And he just goes, shh. And then he turns back and the camera tracks back with him. And it was one of those things where it became such a characteristic of the scene that we had this kind of camera going back. I mean, it did occasionally cut to other things, but for the most part, it stayed in this tracking shot, going back and forth. And it just gave it this sense of energy and style with him, the way he was just kind of flowing back from person to person, and very just kind of like almost giddily, psychotically saying, we're going to kill people. So, kill one of the his firstborn or whatever, kill his oldest, to send a message. And he also, key point as well is that he's also suspecting a Rabbi Milligan. He's like, hey, bring him and see how loyal he is, because he doesn't trust him. So he's sort of put in a job.
It is just, comes down to strong direction, and I think that is something that this show has had throughout, even in season 3. I think when we weren't in love with a lot of the stuff, the direction was usually pretty good.
Yeah, I thought that scene stood out to me. And then, of course, the actual tension of when Milligan goes with this guy that he sends on the job with him to kill this Cannon's son, and it's very tense. And the whole time Milligan's question is like, does this come from Josto? Does this come from the boss? And he keeps questioning to the point where when they get to the actual hit moment where they pull up alongside the car and they're going to fire, Milligan's the one who kind of stops him and pushes his hand so that he doesn't actually hit anyone, because he realizes that if this happens, it's going to start a war. Like, the war's done, and also the kids that have been swapped are probably both just instantly dead, because now they're both in enemy grounds. That's kind of how this works. It's kind of the whole point of taking the kids. Yeah. So his sort of cooler head, if you will, prevails.
I liked his kind of argument back, because he's like, hey, no, this is what we're supposed to be doing. He's like, yeah, well, if you try and say something, then I'll just be like, well, you're taking orders from not the boss, and let's see how that goes down. Yeah, and it's actually because, which also set this up, because I mean the older son here, I mean maybe he was around in the first couple episodes, but we got to sort of see him properly in this one, because there's a whole scene, which again I thought was another sort of well acted set piece moment, was this guy comes up to Cannon asking for a handout because he's poor, he wants some food, he wants a cup of coffee or whatever. And Cannon does this really cruel sort of speech where he pulls out this one. He doesn't pull out some change. He pulls out like a roll of cash. It's probably like 1,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it's probably $1,000, or I mean, depending how big the bills are, it could be even 10,000. I have no idea.
It could be. Yeah, I didn't catch it, but it looked hefty. Is the point?
It's always that joke actually. Whenever in movies and stuff, there's always like a briefcase full of money for like 10 grand, but 10 grand actually doesn't look like that much if you have the right like bills for it. It could actually just.
It could be this quite easily. Could be 10 grand in this little roll.
Yeah, because like $100 bills, you don't need that many of them for 10 grand, really, when you think about it.
Well, 100?
Yeah, it's just 100 bills. That's not a lot.
The fact that you didn't say it straight away made me question, because I was like, I'm pretty sure it's just 100, but then you didn't say it, like, so I'm like, am I right, or am I being presumptuous?
I wasn't trying to trick you.
It just felt like a maths trap, and I'm not prepared for that.
No, and 100 bills isn't a lot. I mean, that could be 100 bills in that roll, right?
Oh, easily. Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be.
That's not that thick.
Clearly, I've never rolled $100 bills into a roll, so I don't know. I've actually done it. So to know that it's that thick, because I'm not rich, but
one day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, normal people don't take out that much money and put it in cash in their pocket. I mean, certainly not these days. Maybe it was more common at the time.
If they're going to buy a car or something, I don't want to buy that in cash. A lot of people do that.
You probably just use your card. You don't need to.
No. If you're buying it like secondhand from someone, not like a dealership or anything. Just if you're buying it from someone, that's often in cash.
Yeah. Okay. Sure, but I don't know. Anyway, the point is that he pulls this out. He gives this great speech about how as soon as he pulls out this money, like this guy's eyes kind of light up. He's like, "Wait, what? You're going to give me that?" And he talks about how in this 60 seconds that he's holding this money out, this guy is thinking about all the things he could do with that money. He's thinking further ahead. He's not just thinking about breakfast. He's thinking about what he could do in a month with this money, how he could maybe invest it or get a job with it or something, get some nice clothes and go and get a job. That's not what he says in the scene. I'm just sort of giving my own examples of what he could be doing. But then he puts it back in his pocket. And he's like, yeah, but now I've just taken it away from him. I basically made him think of this whole life that he could have, and I took it away. That's the power of what this is. And the reason why I'm bringing this up here specifically is because this is all for the benefit of his son. He's trying to convince his son to follow the right path, or what he sees as the right path, because he wants him to sort of follow in his footsteps. Because the overzealous guy of Ptolemy from Legion gets the job of being his driver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah,
it's been a while.
So, this idea that he's trying to like make it clear what it is to be who he is and why he should be, living up to the family name or whatever the logic is at this point. And all this bobbles up because at the end of the episode, the final scene of the episode is after this attempted hit that's went wrong, and mainly because Milligan sort of intervened. And Milligan, and his son does say that he saw that Rabbi Milligan stopped it. Like, he knows that someone on that side. So
there's some level of respect there.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. I think the two key things in the scene, obviously, is that his son basically says, no, like, they weren't shooting at me, they were shooting at you. I'm just the target because, by proxy. I'm just you by proxy. And he kind of storms out. So Cannon's attempts to kind of win over his son are going swimmingly here. Right? But the other big thing in this scene that is the big dramatic point is that they're kind of basically speculating what's happening. Are they like making a move? Are they doing this? And Doctor says, yeah, but like, did this order come from Josto, or did this come from the brother? And if they're not talking to each other, then is this a civil war? Is there something brewing where they're against each other? Because if we retaliate, because he never quite says this, but I think what he was implying, what I was taking from it, is if you attack them now, they'll essentially become unified because they'll both agree they have to fight back. But if they're fighting each other, then we let that simmer. We let that take care of itself.
Let them do that, and then you've got easy pickings at the end for whoever wins. So
what I loved about the scene from a directing point of view, though, is the entire time, once he turns around and he's talking to Doctor, there's a reflection of Cannon. And essentially, it's not even like a mirror, it's just something metallic or whatever, but it's like a perfect square, and it literally is showing that he's in a box right now. He's in a box, and he has to make this choice to try and, like, get out of his box. I don't know, it's those little visual touches that I really appreciate. That his world's closing in around him. He, throughout this day, they've had this retaliation attempt against his son, everything else that's going on, because the other plot, of course, is that the two prisoners steal from them because they're casing on one of their hideouts with the money, and they come in with shotguns, which is probably the worst scene in the episode because it devolves into disgusting, like, humor.
As soon as it started with it started with like a fart outside, I was like, oh, for God's sake, this shit's back again. Yeah. And it got worse. Yeah, there's this vomiting, there's farting mid like combat scene. It's a real shame because it completely ruined it, didn't it? It ruins the scene for me. It's a shame because I like these characters, especially. I was kind of thinking, is there supposed to be like an implication about like maybe the pie being poisoned, and there's actually like supposed to be a link between what happened in the first episode and then this, and I'm like, and maybe there is still, I don't know. To Mayflower, I don't know. Also, it's played for laughs. I don't like it. Yeah, it's played for laughs. Because Swanee, I think, actually is quite interesting. I kind of like her. She's got this, like, I mean, she's literally dressed as a cowboy, but like she has the accent, and whenever she starts talking about stuff, she's kind of interesting. She has a whole speech about her dad in this episode that was kind of like weirdly transfixing to watch and listen to, but then it turns into this where she's like, because it turns out that they're kind of a romantic pairing as well, which we find out when they're hiding in the coffin, leaving the building. They kiss, but then she farts and kind of ruins the scene, and then the entire heist scene. But anyway, the reason why I was casually bringing this up at this moment was because, like, the reason why I was saying him being in a box was so sort of prominent in my mind was because all these things are happening, and they're even questioning, is that like connected to the Italians? And like, no, it can't be, because it was two women, and neither of them were Italian. So tends to be a giveaway. Yeah. So like. This idea of him feeling that the world's closing in on him because it is literally coming in from different avenues. Now, admittedly, I don't really see
that pair kind of continually coming for them. Like that seems like a one and done, where they've got their money and they're. I mean, I'm sure they won't get away clean because it's Fargo. Come up and this happen.
Yeah.
But no, I thought this episode had a lot of those moments. And we haven't even got to what might be the funniest handjob scene that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I'd forgot about this.
Particularly the fact that Mayflower is singing. I can't even know what you call that, but it starts with the.
I only know it as the Man United song, because that's what they sing. Glory, glory, Man United.
Sure.
And I think any football fan in the country would associate with that. I think it's from like the Civil War or something originally.
That sounds. Why are Man United fans singing a song from the Civil War?
I don't know. They repurposed it a long time ago, and that's just they sing "Glory, Glory, Man United" to that tune. That's the thing. They've done it for decades.
Now I don't know the lyrics that well, like except from one part that I'm going to point out in a second because I thought it was funny. But what side of the Civil War did it come from? Because that's especially
don't know, and I could be misremembering to be completely honest. But I think in my mind that's where it comes from. Like I vaguely remember reading that at some point. But I could be way off base here, so don't take that as fact.
Yeah, the comments want to fill us in here. Please do let us know. But one of the first lines in the song, as she's starting to jack off Josto, who's watching, he's basically just spying on the doctor, right, the head doctor at this hospital, where she's going for a job interview because she got fired from the other place. So she's there and she talks him into getting a job, and she's sort of doing that Fargo charm, right? To the point where she's leaving and she's like, oh, what sort of sweet do you like? Baked or otherwise. She's like, well, if you're going to twist my arm, I guess I like the macaroon. And she's like, challenge accepted. And she walks out. But she's, we cut outside and the Josto's out in his car just watching from the window, and he's like doing the finger guns, and he's like, yeah, he's biding his time. And he especially feels hurt by this point because his brother was kind of like, you can't even kill a doctor kind of attitude. He's like, no, I played it smart. But she comes out and sees him. And comes into his car, and he's like, who are you again? And he's like, oh, you kidder, you've been following me to my new place at work. I'm all flattered. I've had many a suitor, but you're very different. Gives him some something to snort. It's not cocaine, right? Because it's something she's stealing from the hospital. I didn't, because
cocaine's white. This was not white.
It looked white to me.
Was it? I vaguely remember it being a lot darker. Not like black or a different color entirely, but it looked kind of grey from what I remember. I'm misremembering though.
I just assumed it was white with like the lighting being kind of dull, but yeah, maybe you're right. But I don't know exactly what she's starting, but she pulls out some powder and snorts it with him, and then she just unzips him and starts chugging away, and one of the first lines of the song, and obviously it's really funny because she's just sort of staring at him singing the song as she's like just in perfect rhythm, like jacking him off, and he's just kind of like, whoa,
what's going on here?
But one of the first lines of the song is the glory of the coming of the Lord. It was the word coming that just made me buckle in the context of what was happening. So credit where credit's due. That's maybe the most Fargo thing it's done so far this season. Is this?
And it's been fairly Fargo consistently.
Yeah. It's just not been it's un-Fargo up until this point, but this felt really Fargo.
It did, and then at the end she's like, "Just next time, just call me." And he's like, "What's your name again?" And she's like, you kidding? Yeah,
so he doesn't know who she is to call her. I mean, he's probably remembered it's the nurse from the hospital, but he still doesn't know what her name is or any key details.
Yeah.
Do you know what struck me actually as I was watching this scene is that I think maybe what was missing a little bit from last episode, and why maybe I missed like when Ethel and her family are a bit more involved and have less to do, is that I think with Fargo season 2, and to an extent season 1 as well, and I'm including some of the police characters in season 1 in this, is that I think it's really grounded by the normal characters, and by normals I mean the innocent people who are just kind of quirky, or even innocent. Actually, take away the word innocent, because I'm including like Kirsten Dunst's character from season 2. So I'm thinking like something like Mayflower here, who is kind of
definitely isn't innocent.
Isn't innocent, but she's not like part of the organized crime family. She's this kind of weird character on her own, and then you have the family who are kind of this innocent kind of central heart of the show potentially, and I think maybe. Now, admittedly, this episode did a pretty good job with it, where I was into a lot of the mob scenes, but I think last episode maybe suffered for me. Analysing it now in hindsight, there wasn't maybe as much of that, because I think part of the charm of Fargo is some of these sort of more kooky, normal-ish characters.
Sometimes it gets a little bit too caught up in being a crime drama.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Because you go back to season 1, you had the main police lady. I can't remember their names now. Tom Hanks' son and some of the other some of these more normal characters. Sure, you had the hitman and Billy Bob Thornton who was doing all this shady shit, and that was fun to watch and stuff. But you had all these other characters who were anchoring it, where they kind of felt like, okay, if this hitman comes across their path, they're all screwed because he's so dangerous compared to all these characters. And likewise in season 2, you had Milligan, you had the gang and whatever, but then you had in the center of all this, you had Fat David and Kristen Dunst trying to survive, and they were in over their heads. And I think that in over their heads, caught up in all this craziness. You need those characters in the middle of it who are, and I guess maybe Mayflower doesn't really quite attach herself to that because she is so crazy on her own, but you do need some of those characters in the middle who are there to kind of be the steady ones. Patrick Wilson in season 2, for example.
Yeah, and that's probably where season 2 failed. Not season 2, season 3.
Season
failed.
3, yeah.
As all of the main characters were connected.
Yes, they were all weird or part of the plot too much in some way.
There's a fine line where you want things to feel connected enough, right? Because I said earlier on, this episode felt a little bit disjointed to me, and I think we narrowed it down to actually being the pacing thing rather than any individual plots. But you want things to feel like it's cohesive, but also you don't want everything to feel like it's all just it's the organized crime stuff. You've got to have something different that makes it Fargo, essentially.
It's that moment you were talking about with Ethel, sort of seeing her aunt peeking around the corner with the gun and shooing her away. It's the normal person being caught up in this world who's not usually here. That's kind of, I think, the heart of a lot of Fargo for me. And I was there. I was thinking about it for some reason when he was getting jacked off with the singing.
And I don't think this season's quite there yet in terms of that balance. I don't think it's quite got it. I think it's still leaning a little too heavily into the mob side of things, but I've got hope still. I
do think Timothy Olyphant, outside of, he's always chewing carrots and stuff. He's a little bit quirky, but he's a bit more normal in the sense that he's just there to do his job so far, at least.
Yeah, they kind of do a whole thing with him being weird first, because they introduce him. He's just sat there and he's talking about being a Mormon and the police chief's a blasphemer essentially, and all this stuff. And then he's like, so why are you even in my office? He's like, oh yeah, I'm sheriff or whatever I am, and
U.S. Marshal it was.
Marshal, thank you. And I'm tracking down these comments. Why don't you just lead with that? It's like, you swear too much, basically.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing actually. Is the regular detective whose name I've forgotten. He we get more of his nervous tick where he actually flipped the light switch on a couple of times before he goes into the room at one point, and he's always doing these little things.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was this episode or last episode where he was knocking the door before he left.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah,
I think it might have been last episode. But I'm not entirely certain. It's kind of, some of those moments are kind of blending together because I don't remember the context exactly. I just remember that being very strange and him being told you don't have to do that. It's fine. You can just leave. And obviously, it's just a compulsion for him. Yeah.
Actually, just I don't want to gloss over because we kind of glossed over it when we mentioned it. But I don't want to talk about how good the tension was on the potential. When they're building up to the shooting that was going to happen and then didn't. With the cars and. When he's rolled down the window and he's like, you sure? And he's like, he's rolling down the window, but he's kind of protesting the whole way. So there's kind of this double thing where it's not only is someone going to get killed, but is it going to be him that's forced to do it? And what does that then do for everything? So no, I'm very curious as to where all this goes. But no, I think overall this is probably my favorite episode of the 3 so far. One might have arguably had some stronger moments on its own, but I think this had a lot of great scenes and moments.
I think it's for me it's comparable with 1 in different ways because 1 obviously had the fantastic opening section, and then everything after was fine, right? But it didn't feel like you got enough of anything to get into it because it was we'd used up half the episode on the opening. Whereas this here, all of the things are better for the most part than in episode 1, but I don't know if anything comes as strong as just that opening section still.
This did also have more fart and vomit and disgusting humor though. So
it did. It was bad enough for just that one extended moment in the first episode, but this was an entire scene.
Yeah. So but hey, no, I mean, I feel good about this episode though, and I'm definitely, if people thought we were too down in episode 2, I think this was a notable kind of like, hey, if we can expect this more often, then great. Like,
yeah, this is more heading in the right direction. I think I still want to find a little bit of a better balance between what sort of things we're doing. At the minute it's maybe 75% mob. I'd rather cut that down to about like 60% mob. But if we can find that balance as the season goes on, I'll be very happy.
Yeah. All right, so let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Do like and subscribe, all that stuff. Liking is super important, and it helps keep all the content coming because we know you like it. YouTube knows you like it, more importantly, so they'll share it out to more people, so please do. You can also support us financially over at patreon.com/MailedFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. And of course, catch us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us, so thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got anything else?